And when NASA puts a good face on it and an explosion takes place, people feel lied to. They feel betrayed by NASA. And I don't want that to happen. I love the space program. So I have to help to save NASA from itself.
All right. Wildcard line, you're on the air with Dr. Kaku. Hi.
Good morning. This is Dan in Virginia.
Yes, sir.
Doctor, first of all, I'd like to comment on the way you're taking this higher dimensional physics and putting it in layman terms. I appreciate that very much. My question is, have you found any information in the crop circles as far as keys to understanding higher dimensional physics? I know Doug Ruby has found a way of interpreting some of these crop circles, which he indicates are showing us how to build.
You may not be familiar with Doug Ruby. Doctor, let me begin by asking you about the crop circle phenomenon. It is intensely interesting. It obviously is more than a couple of guys running around with boards and chains, and these crop circles are becoming increasingly complex and increasingly frequent. This is the biggest year yet, and they are absolutely astounding. What is a likely explanation? Is there one?
Well, I've heard some people claim that there's some kind of gateway to another dimension, you know. And look, I'm a scientist. I'm open to all sorts of crazy things. Richard Feynman, you know, one of the greatest scientists of our generation, was always open to the craziest ideas, because you never know, because, you know, the laws of physics are always much more sophisticated than you think they are, right? They always pull tricks on us, right? And that's the way the universe is, right? My only statement, though, is that if you were to build a dimensional gateway, which, of course, is possible, I think, the energy would be enormous. It would take an engine to drive this thing forward.
Well, then let me give you the basics of what Doug Ruby, he mentioned Doug Ruby, I had him on the program. Doug Ruby is a major airline pilot, and as a hobby, he began to try and decipher crop circles. In that work, he found that if you take a crop circle and put it, for example, on a piece of cardboard, and it's round, and you spin it, as you spin it, it begins to look entirely different than it did as it was sitting alone. There's some sort of symmetrical reason to it, and when you take two or three of them, they bend over in another dimension as they spin, and he's claiming these are designs for either a ship or now, with the latter crop circles, they began very simply in about 1989, and they're getting very complex now, and he suggests what we're receiving now are plans for a propulsion system. Intriguing.
Right. Well, you see, as I mentioned before, the basic pattern for a dimensional gateway would be the Kerr black hole discovered in 1963 by the mathematician Roy Kerr. Basically a spinning ring. Okay, and that was, of course, the model for the movie Stargate.
Yes.
Because the movie Stargate was based on the work of physicists like myself. And the spinning ring would then open up this hole between our sector of the galaxy and perhaps another sector of the galaxy. The key thing is the energy supply. You know, what it looks like is basically a ring. What drives it is energy. And if you could attain this kind of energy, then yes, it may be possible to open up these things. But on Earth, unless they tell us the energy source, you know, unless they tell us how to build the gasoline, so to speak, right? You can give, for example, you know, Aborigines the blueprint of a car, but unless you tell them that it's supplied by gasoline, the car's not going to go anywhere.
That's right.
Then it takes energy.
All right, well, let's, for the sake of this conversation, let us say that we had the available energy and we created something like a Stargate. What assurance do we have that the other end, of course, they landed on a nice sandy planet somewhere or another, what assurance do we have that we would land anywhere at all? Wouldn't the great likelihood be that we would land in the vacuum of space someplace?
Yeah, you would have to open up the Stargate in a very careful way.
Indeed.
So that you know where the other end is going to be.
Precisely. Or you'd end up in the middle of a planet or a sun or
a star or something like that, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to wind up in the middle of another sun someplace. So that's why, you know, you would have to solve these equations in a very precise way that at the present time we're not smart enough. You know, the equations are well defined. We're not smart enough. No one on Earth, no physicist on Earth is yet smart enough to solve all these equations to give you all the predictions as to what happens when space warps and holes open up and stuff like that, okay?
One other question. Would it, once opened, theoretically, would it remain open to come from the other side to this side?
Okay, now, this is where there's some debate among physicists. It used to be thought they were one-way gateways. There is something called the event horizon, as you mentioned earlier. The event horizon is an imaginary line. There's nothing there, really. But it's a point of no return. So if you go through the event horizon and through the Kerr metric, as we call it, then you would not be able to come back because of the event horizon. However, a new class of solutions was discovered about 7 years ago, again out of Caltech. And these are called transversible wormholes. And again, if you want to see them, you can look up Physical Review Letters. All the mathematics is published in Physical Review Letters, which is the most prestigious physics magazine on the planet Earth.
I've got to ask you to stay good and close to your phone.
Yeah. And when they did this, they found that you could get transversible wormholes, that is, you go back and forth. They have no event horizon, which was quite astonishing. That dispelled the old idea that black holes are one-way streets. You can go to Alpha Centauri, but you'll never be able to come back. If these transversible wormholes hold up, then yeah, two-way travel is possible.
There have been many things ascribed to the paranormal that were kind of like that, seeming holes that opened up, places from which creatures that we can't identify may have come, ships in the Bermuda Triangle that have entered areas that seem to defy explanation with spinning compasses and strange fogs and otherworldly surroundings, and then suddenly, whoosh, you're back. Could these be evidence of those?
In principle, yes. In practice, of course, it would take some
not created by us. Not created by us.
It would not be created by us, because if it were created by us, somebody would have won the Nobel Prize already and
sure.
gone to Stockholm and got all the accolades of the next Einstein, right? But yeah, it's conceivable that, again, a Type 2 civilization would have energies on the scale of about 10 billion times the energy on the Earth, in which case they could begin to manipulate stars, small stars, and that would be sufficient to begin to open up event horizons. And in fact, there's even a movie that's just coming out called Event Horizon.
Certainly is.
In fact, I've been asked to consult with several movie companies concerning these wormholes and things. So in principle, a lot of the paranormal stuff, things disappearing, reappearing, gateways and whatever, could be explained by hyperspace if, and this is a very big if, you have energy. Okay? It's not what the time machine looks like so much. It's the gasoline that energizes the time machine, you see? You don't have to have, as H.G. Wells had, this atom-like looking object and you energize it and you go backwards or forwards in time. It's the energy. That's the bottleneck. That's the weak link in the whole chain.
In our creation of it. But if we assume that we have seen such things or such things have been seen, then we might theorize somebody else has got it.
That's right. It would have to be somebody, at least a Type 2 civilization. Okay. And again, I believe they're out there, you know. I'm not convinced they've actually physically visited us, because they would have sent probes to us first, right? However, I think they're obviously out there. And if they want to go between star systems, flying saucers is not the way to do it. That's the old-fashioned way of doing it. The new way of doing it is with gateways, you know, Stargates, basically.
All right. East of the Rockies, you're on there with Dr. Kaku. Hi.
Yes, Art?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
where are you?
Try to bear with me. I'm a layman.
I will. Where are you?
Kansas.
Okay.
Doctor, if in relating to energy, I think of light speed, E equals mc squared. When you magnify your vision by looking through a telescope and you look at an object out in space, do you not see things as they are happening at a distance? In other words, you can see actually faster than the speed of light would take for that image to get to you?
Not quite. You're looking actually backwards in time, because light is slow on an astronomical scale. It takes about a second for light to go to the moon, for example.
Right.
It takes about 8 minutes for light to go to the sun. Right. And it takes about a day for light to go to Pluto. And it takes about 4 years for light to go to Alpha Centauri. So when you look at the night sky, most of the light that you see is about 100 years old, looking at the night sky. If you look at the Milky Way, that's about 10,000 years old, 10 to 50,000 years old.
Okay, even through a telescope.
Yeah. So even just with the naked eye, you would see things like the Milky Way galaxy about 50,000 light years away. With a telescope simply concentrates old light. So it doesn't make light younger or it doesn't make light instantaneous. It simply concentrates old light, fossil light. You realize that light from outer space is older than the dinosaurs, some of them. Okay?
Okay, then if you were to fire a laser through a telescope, it can't reach its destination faster than normal light speed.
That's right. If you were to fire a laser beam to the moon, it would make an image about 5 miles across. That's a calculation we give our physics PhD candidates to calculate the size of a laser beam on the moon. So a pocket laser fired at the moon would create an image about 5 miles across, very dim, of course.
But it would not get there faster than normal travel by being...
it would travel at the speed of light. Laser light is nothing but coherent red light coming from helium neon. So it would travel at the speed of light.
At the speed of light. All right, Doctor, hold tight. We'll be right back to you. My guest is Dr. Michio Kaku from the city of New York University. We're privileged indeed to have him here, and if you have a question, we've got no open lines. They're all going. But try as you might, get in, and we will continue to ask him questions for as long as his eyelids remain open. I'm Art Bell, and this is Coast to Coast AM. All right, Doctor, I want to read a fax to you, and this will be a kind of a critical fax, and see how you respond to it.
Mm-hmm.
Art, if your guest would just check the facts, he would find there is no global warming. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, the average temperature has decreased by 0.3 degrees this century. This has been verified by NASA weather satellites. There is no way that CFCs can destroy the ozone layer because they're heavier than air. DuPont funded a flawed study in order to force everyone to use their new product since their Freon was going off patent. Their new refrigerant gas will be outlawed when that one goes off patent too. Do you think it's a coincidence? The space shuttle does more damage to the ozone layer than anything we could possibly do. Active volcanoes in the world do far more to add hot gases to our atmosphere than we could ever hope to do with our little automobiles. From Ken in Kansas City. How would you answer that?
First of all, the Nobel Prize in Chemistry was given to those people who worked out how Freon and CFCs destroy the ozone layer. As far as ozone depletion is concerned, that's a fact. It's not a question of speculation or theory. Now, global warming, on the other hand, as this person pointed out, is a theory. It still has not been verified once and for all. However, I was in Greenland about 10 years ago, and I had the chance to look at people drilling into the Arctic ice sheet. They go, almost a mile down, and they pick up ice that's over 100,000 years old. And I saw them extracting ice bubbles, little tiny bubbles inside the ice, and measuring the carbon dioxide content of these bubbles, and then calculating the temperature. Over 100,000 years, the Earth now has the most carbon dioxide ever over the last 100,000 years. Forget about the last century. Over the last 100,000 years, we've had the most carbon dioxide. It's accelerated, of course, since the Industrial Revolution. And temperatures go up and down like a roller coaster in synchronization with the carbon dioxide content. Now look at the planet Venus. Venus is the greenhouse effect gone amok. Venus is hotter than Mercury. Now, when you were in grade school, you learned that Mercury should have been the hottest planet because it's the closest to the sun. But that's not true. Venus is actually a little bit hotter than Mercury because its atmosphere is carbon dioxide, and it has a greenhouse effect, a runaway greenhouse effect. So the greenhouse effect, as far as Venus is concerned, is a fact of life. That's why it's hell. Men may be from Mars and women may be from Venus, but Venus is a hell of a place to come from.
No comment.
However, as far as the Earth is concerned, the person is correct. It's still a theory. However, the United Nations 2 years ago released a report endorsed by 2,000 meteorologists and atmospheric scientists saying that there is enough data now to warrant action, perhaps a carbon tax, perhaps restriction on carbon dioxide. Not a crash program, because no one is saying that is a fact. The ozone depletion is a fact, and it has been traced to CFCs, for which the Nobel Prize was given just last year in chemistry. The global warming is still a theory.
You're listening to an encore presentation of Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell.
Here again is Art.
With regard to the ozone, can they project how bad it's going to get before it begins to get better? I mean, children in Australia, I have a friend I talk to in Australia all the time, they are required to wear hats and be covered. And I would rather not have that happen here, and it seems like we're headed in that direction. In other words, CFCs still continue to deplete ozone. When will we turn the corner, or will we?
In about 20 years. The rate of deceleration has gone down, but the absolute amount of ozone depletion is still rising, and it'll continue to rise for about 20 years. Each CFC molecule destroys about 100,000 ozone particles, and it floats. It does not, as the person said, stay to the Earth. It floats into the upper atmosphere, and, our high-altitude planes can pick up CFCs quite easily, contradicting the statement of the person who faxed that comment. So we do know it's a statement of chemistry now that CFCs have been destroying the upper atmosphere. Fortunately, the North Pole does not have a hole. The South Pole has a huge hole about the size of the United States, but the North Pole does not have a hole, thank God, because if it did, then all of us would be cautioned on ozone alert days not to have children play in the sunlight.
Could that occur before the 20 years ends?
I'm crossing my fingers. I hope that an ozone hole does not erupt over the North Pole, okay? The reason, by the way, is rather interesting. The CFC theory was untestable on the Earth. We tried to duplicate the effect on Earth, but we failed. Then we put ice crystals in these test canisters, and then the ozone depletion took place on the Earth, on the laboratory. So we now know that ice crystals are a platform on which the ozone molecule is eaten up by CFCs. We can now induce it in a laboratory on the Earth. It's not a theory anymore. We can actually duplicate it on the Earth now in a laboratory. So ice crystals form in Antarctica twice a year, precisely when the hole opens up over Antarctica. The North Pole has less ice crystals. That's why we do not seem to have a large hole over the North Pole that we have over the South Pole, because of the formation of ice crystals, which form as a catalyst, as a platform on which the chemical reactions take place.
Well, this latest this latest shuttle mission released a German satellite that went up specifically to study the ozone, and I can only assume that they are concerned, or they wouldn't be launching missions to study it.
That's right. And as the person correctly pointed out, the shuttlecrafts do emit a tremendous amount of ozone-gobbling chemicals. Not enough to create the effect. However, it will accelerate the effect. And NASA right now is looking at the problem, by the way. This is a serious problem. The shuttle flights release a lot of chemicals way up there, and can, in fact, accelerate the ozone depletion problem. It's not the cause of it, but it will greatly accelerate it.
All right. Back to the phones. First-time caller line. You're on the air with Professor Kaku. Hi.
Hi. Good morning, Mr. Bell and Mr. Kaku.
Where are you, sir?
Liverpool, New York.
All right.
I was wondering about the different space-time theories, at the micro level, the space-time fabrics.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's loop theory by, I think, Ashtekar
and Smolin. That's right.
And there's string, there's something I've nicknamed soap suds.
Right, that's correct.
Yeah. I was wondering if there were, and then Twister. I don't know. I think that was in the 1960s. I don't know if it's
that
still
died
around.
out. Right.
Yeah. I was wondering if there were any others or.
No, that's basically it. The leading one is string theory, and that's the one I'm referring to, because strings can only vibrate in 10-dimensional hyperspace. The loops of Ashtekar and Smolin, as you pointed out, have never gotten anywhere because it's probably divergent. It's probably a divergent theory. You get infinities cropping up all over the place. So the loop thing that you mentioned has not gotten anywhere. The leading candidate is string theory. It's a hyperspatial theory. It exists only in 10-dimensional hyperspace. And there are at least 10,000 papers written on the subject. I'm one of the pioneers of the theory, by the way. I'm the founder of string field theory. It's my creation. So that is the dominant theory right now, which has mesmerized hundreds of physicists in all the leading institutions on the planet Earth at the present time. You can go to any country on the Earth, and they'll have seminars on this theory.
Oh, okay. And one more point. Could the loops be strings, made into loops?
Yeah, I've thought about that. I've looked at Smolin and Ashtekar's work, and I thought maybe they were related to strings, but I don't think so. Strings, by the way, for people who don't know, vibrate at different frequencies, just like the Greeks talked about the Pythagorean harmonies of violin strings, and each note of a violin string corresponds to a note, right? Each vibration of the superstring corresponds to a particle, like the quarks. The quarks and the mesons, the Yang-Mills gauge fields, all of them can be viewed as nothing but vibrations of an elemental string. So the harmonies of the string are the laws of physics. And the symphony created by them is what is called the universe. And at the present time, this is the leading theory. Two Nobel Prize winners, Murray Gell-Mann and Steve Weinberg, have publicly stated that this is probably it. This is the theory that probably eluded Einstein for the last 30 years of his life. And at the present time, no one is smart enough on the Earth to solve all these equations, unfortunately.